Good morning and welcome to the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce Business Breakfast Series. My name is Kimberly Nadeau-Lindlof. I'm the President and CEO of the Mid-Maine Chamber, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. Before we begin our program, I want to take a moment to thank our 2025 Business Breakfast Series sponsors. They include AT&T, Cross Insurance, New Dimensions Federal Credit Union, Nicholson, Mishu, and Nadeau CPAs, O'Donnell Lee Martin Duboard Attorneys, Sheridan Construction, Morning Sentinel and Turner Publications are our print media sponsors. 1079 The Mix is our radio sponsor, and Kennebec Savings Bank is our video sponsor. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Fort & Sohn Furnishings, our additional sponsor for today. Be sure to visit this month's Business Breakfast Spotlighters. They're out back: Dominion Law, LLC, Oliver and Friends Bookshop, and Prime Financial. Please welcome our newest chamber member, Highledge Marketing. And I want to thank Wyatt Laverdier of Loorsmith Wyatt for being our entrepreneurial spotlighter this morning, and the Central Maine Growth Council and Harold Alphon Institute for Business Innovation for sponsoring him. Just a reminder to please turn off your cell phones for consideration of our speaker and the audience. There are also evaluation forms on your table. If you would take a moment to complete those at the end, we will get the feedback to our committee and the speakers. The Chamber would like to invite you to attend our following events. Our September Business Breakfast will be held next Wednesday, the 17th, with AYCC at Camp Tracy on McGrath Pond in Oakland. Join us from 5:30 to 7 p.m. for good food, good drinks, networking, 50-50 drawings, and door prizes. Please join us for several ribbon cuttings coming up over the next few weeks. There are so many, I'm not going to list them. For a complete listing, go to midmainechamber.com/ribbon cuttings. Join the excitement. It's about time for our annual Super Raffle Dinner, a night in Monte Carlo held at Kennebec Valley Community College on September 25th from 5 to 8. Tickets are $135, which include dinner for two and a prize. You'll have a chance to win $750, $1,500, and $3,000 in cash prizes. Hear a great comedian who's going to be emceeing this year. Join a costume contest in the Monte Carlo theme and enjoy 50-50 and a jewelry drawing. Get your tickets now by reaching out to Cindy at midmainechamber.com. Our next business breakfast will be here on October 2nd. Well, not here. It's going to be over in the other room. It's going to be a gubernatorial meet and greet. The 15 gubernatorial candidates are all committed to being here. It's going to begin a little bit earlier at 7 a.m. and run through 9:30 because there were 15 of them. There is limited seating. We do expect it will sell out, so if you're interested in attending, please let us know. Today's presentation is entitled, "What is Business Exit Planning and What is the Buzz About ESOPs?" Mark Ford and Susan Sherbel will present an interactive workshop on this topic. There will be time provided for Q&A at the conclusion of this presentation, and this event's being live streamed, and a link can be provided if you are ever not able to make one and you want to listen to it. So it's my pleasure to introduce Michelle Jolalabi, VP of Human Resources at Thomas College, and our past board chair, to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Mark Ford and Susan Sherbel this morning. Mark Ford is the principal of Great Pond Consulting, LLC, and president of Waterville Investment Properties, LLC. He has an extensive background in exit planning, coaching, and consulting, having guided numerous regional family-owned businesses through exit transactions totaling over $60 million. Mr. Ford began his career as a certified public accountant, licensed in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Maine, after graduating from Bentley University, where he was recognized as a member of the Falcon Society, the Order of Omega, and elected to the senior class cabinet. He started his professional journey at PricewaterhouseCoopers. In 1989, Mr. Ford and his family relocated to Waterville, Maine, where he joined Days Jewelers as a co-owner and vice president of finance. During his 25-year tenure, he played a key role in expanding the company from a single store on Main Street to becoming the largest independent jeweler in northern New England, with locations in Maine, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. Excuse me. In 2012, Mr. Ford was appointed CEO of James D. Julia Auctioneers, one of North America's top antique auction houses with a worldwide client base. Under his leadership, sales at Julia's increased by approximately 50%, crossing the $50 million threshold. When Jim Julia, the founder, faced a family health crisis, he entrusted Mr. Ford with facilitating the company's sale, allowing him to focus on his wife's care. This experience profoundly influenced Mr. Ford's career direction, leading him to dedicate his work to helping business owners achieve successful and fulfilling exits from their companies. In addition to his professional achievements, Mr. Ford is a committed community leader. He has served as president of the Waterville Rotary Club, president of the Downtown Waterville Business Association, and as a founding member of the Waterville Region Arts and Community Center, the precursor to the Paul F. Shump Center. He has also held board positions with various organizations, including Maine General. Now on to Susan. Ms. Sherbel is an investment banker and president with BAS Financial Holdings, an ESOP-owned company and parent of Bellevue Associates, LLC, a firm specializing in employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs, and other financial transactions. To date, the firm has done over 100 transactions for privately held companies and owners who are looking to gain liquidity, institute tax-efficient succession planning, find a lucrative alternative to a sale to private equity, a competitor, and/or manage their tax issues. They have clients in 23 states. Before forming Bellevue Associates, Ms. Sherbel was a managing director at Merrill Lynch Investment Banking. There, she headed a group of professionals who specialized in implementing ESOP transactions for large public companies. During her 13 years at Merrill Lynch, her clientele included GM, Procter & Gamble, Sherwin-Williams, Occidental Petroleum, the Tribune Company, UPS, Deere, the Disney Company, Marriott, United Airlines, Monsanto, etc. Prior to starting at Merrill Lynch in 1988, Ms. Sherbel was an advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Treasury for Tax Policy, where she worked primarily on ESOP legislation and regulations. Ms. Sherbel was part of the team charged with drafting the employee benefit provisions and had primary responsibility for ESOP legislation and regulations relating to the 1986 Internal Revenue Code. Ms. Sherbel is also a lawyer, licensed in Arizona, Washington, D.C., and Maine. She graduated from Harvard University and obtained her law degree from Georgetown University. She has worked 4 decades as an ERISA ESOP attorney with specialization in transactions and mergers, acquisitions involving ESOPs. She has an LLM, Masters of Taxation, from Georgetown University. She worked as a tax attorney at Cohen and Uritz in Washington, D.C., Steptoe and Johnson in Washington, D.C., and Hughes, Hubbard, and Reed in New York City. Ms. Sherbel was a guest lecturer at the Columbia Business School and New York University School of Law. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ford and Ms. Sherbel.
Thank you.
This mic off, 'cause you're using that one, right?
Mm-hmm. Is this working? Everybody hear me? And I'm going to test this, see if I'm doing it right. There we go. Okay. A lot of you know me from my work here at Days Jewelers for 25 years. I see some old the people with the gray hair, probably the ones that we got to know each other way back when. I transitioned. I ran Julia's for 6-7 years going into the sale. And what was interesting for me was I'm a little under 60 years old. I've gotten up every morning knowing what I'm going to do when I show up at work that day, and then all of a sudden, things change. We were working in a transition plan to move towards an ESOP. I had met Susan back then. We were going to do that at Julia's, and all of a sudden, Sandy was looking to retire in January 1st, Sandy Julia. In November, she has some headaches that are causing her some problems. She goes down to Boston. I believe it's at Dana-Farber, and it turns out that she's got cancer called glioblastoma, which is 5 years, 100% mortality rate. And everything changed immediately. My dear friend and owner of the business, we were phasing out. We had done an exit plan. I'd been there for 6 years. He went from being involved in 70% of all of the transactions that went through Julia's. We got him down to less than 5%. We'd done all the stuff I'm going to talk to you guys about, but all of a sudden, it was a guillotine came down. Life happened. And he said, I want out of everything. I don't want to co-sign banknotes. I don't want to worry about anything. You're doing a great job. I love you, please. But I want to focus entirely on my wife. And our exit plan that we thought we had, our succession plan that we thought we had, changed in a minute. So we facilitated the sale and got it done. And I had a year non-compete. And the people that we sold to were allegedly friendly competitors, but you can kind of tell in the negotiation what's underneath a little bit. And I was like, I'm really going to honor this year non-compete. I don't want to do anything somewhere and they're saying, oh, that was a trade secret that you created at Julia's and you can't use it. So I took a year off and said, what do I want to do? And I looked back during that time period and said, well, look, I was a CPA, so I was used to consulting. I started my first business, Wyatt, about the same age you are right now. And I've owned and run businesses. And what I found was that here in Central Maine, and as I looked across the country, there wasn't anybody who really had a holistic approach to what to do when you want to get out of your business. The attorneys and the CPAs were great at answering my question and said, oh, if I want to sell my business, how should I structure the deal? They'd give me the answer. If I wanted to say, hey, how can I do this without having to sign a personal guarantee to the bank? I don't know, okay? How can we do this in the most advantageous tax situation? And you would get some ideas, but we wouldn't necessarily get anything. So I started looking around at this concept of business exit planning. And believe it or not, there's actually a very, very, very small profession, but it's dedicated to business exit planning. So I began the process. There were 2 or 3 organizations that certify you for this, with 6 months worth of coursework, exams. The one that I chose to go with basically said you have to find a client, you have to do the coursework, and then present the coursework back to a review board, and we'll make sure that you did it right. So it was very inclusive. So I chose a company out of Massachusetts, the IEPA. Here was the book that I read. I ordered 20 copies, so, I don't know how Kim's going to distribute them, but hopefully there's enough for every business here. And what I did is I read these books, this process made sense to me. This is what was laid out in the book, what I was taught, and what I've practiced since. At some point in time, you are going to leave your business, okay, one way or another. So the best thing for you to do is try to figure out how you want to leave your business. There's the definition of exit planning. The idea of it is plan on your own terms. What do you want your life, what do you want your exit to be? There's 6 steps. You establish your exit goals. Part of them are going to be financial. You have to analyze your financial and mental readiness. And everybody says, what the hell is mental readiness? Okay? Some guy said, "God, I want to be gone." And you ask the next questions. Great! I'm happy for you. You want to be done. When? Tomorrow. Okay. Well, you're not going to have many options. Do you have a transferable business? Less than 20% of the businesses out there are transferable. Okay? The owner is the focal point, and if you are the focal point and the business doesn't run without you, you really don't have a transferable business. Your assets are saleable. You can get liquidation value for them, but there really isn't a transferable business. Many of you, how many of you are the founders or owners of your business? Just a quick show of hands. Okay? When you get up in the morning, do you have an idea what you're going to do? Yep. How many yes? Okay. You know what you're going to do, so that means you have a purpose when you wake up in the morning. Okay? When you're retired, everything's sold, money's invested, you got someone running your portfolio for you. What's your purpose going to be? Is it to go play around the golf? That's good. That'll fill 2-3 days a week. Okay. But some people find after 2 or 3 days a week that there's a little bit of a void and they kind of want to step back in a little bit. Well, if you're planning your exit, put that into what you want to do. If you want to travel, start traveling a little bit now. So you can figure out if that's really going to fill that gap. And if not, how are you going to do it? So that to me is mental readiness. They talk about discover the type of owner you are. There's a quadrant. So you've got a couple of different exit ways to get out of here, okay? Transfer to employees. Susan's going to talk about that at length. To us, and most of the transactions I've done, ESOP has been a really strong consideration. Transfer to management, a management buyout. That sounds great until you start running the numbers and you said, oh, okay, I'm going to sell it to my lead manager. So I'm hypothetical, I'm going to sell it for $1 million and they're going to pay me $100,000 a year. But they don't have the $100,000 a year. So you're going to have to get it to them out of the business. So you got to pay them more salary. They pay the taxes on it. Then they pay the after-taxes dollars to you. Now you have their after-tax dollars, and now you got to pay capital gains tax to the IRS in the state of Maine. So you start with a big, big pile of money, and at the end of the day, it's all gone. A lot of it to taxes, okay? So management buyouts, we talk about it, but I haven't seen one yet. Haven't seen one where it makes sense. Usually the management buyout kicks over to the ESOP plan. Transfer to family, gifting programs, beautiful way to do it. Depends on the size of your business, the value of the company, the size of your estate. You have a private equity recapitalization. I've worked with one of those, and it worked out great. So here's how that works. The one I had, the guy had a company down in southern Maine, very specialized. We didn't think that he'd be able to find a buyer because it was so niche, okay? But went out, and it was a pool company. They did pool service. A private equity group came in and said, hey, we're going to do something called a roll-up. We want to take companies that service pools. We want to take companies that sell pools. We want to take companies that manufacture pools, and we're going to put them in this big company. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's put a number to it. We're going to value the company at $10 million. Wasn't that number, but it was close to it. So what we'll do is we'll pay you $8 million, and we want you to keep the $2 million in the kitty. Okay? And our goal is to, within 5 years, double it, if not increase it by 4 or 5 times. So 5 years from now, they're going to sell their remaining 20%, and if the numbers hold true, it will meet or exceed what he originally sold it for. So he gets 2 bites of the apple, the original sale and the second piece. And for him, he wanted a purpose. Keeps him working. okay? He ended up being in charge of identifying target companies to buy. He's traveling across the entire country. He doesn't need to worry about banking relationships, paying bills, keeping employees happy. He's doing a part of the job that he absolutely loves doing, and they're now moving down to Massachusetts to be closer to their son, so everything check the box. We originally wanted to do something that's not on the screen, but I'll talk about it. It's called a stock recapitalization, okay? And the idea of it is this, is that you have a business, you have great employees, you have one or two key employees who really drive the business, and you've got enough money, you don't need to take the money out. But what you want to do is transfer it to them, not so much in the management buyout way, but it's done differently. So the idea is you have 100 shares now in your business, the value is this high per share. You make it 1,000 shares, the value is down here really low. Still, so you got 1,000 shares. You sell 1 or 10 to this key employee. Doesn't cost them much money at all, does it? It's 1,000th of the value of the company. Next year, you redeem your stock. You go back to, assuming you're an S corporation, you go back in and said, hey, I want to get rid of 10% of my shares. Next year, same thing. Next year, same thing. You do this over a period of time. Next thing you know, you don't own any shares at all, and this person owns all of them. How much did they have to pay in taxes? 0. Okay? So it becomes a real effective way, sometimes for family transfers, sometimes for businesses that don't have another way out. And then we did what we did with Julia's. We had a sale to an outsider, a strategic company that looked at us and said, hey, they were in the auction business. We were number 1 in the world in the rare and collectible firearms. We were number 2 in New England for antiques, and we were number 3 in the world for fine art glass, okay? So by acquiring us, he got our mailing list, he got our catalog list, and he got the key employees in each of those divisions. The rest of the stuff here in Fairfield, they didn't want, okay? So there's a lot of ways that can go. Put an exit plan together. Why? Because it makes a lot of sense for you, okay? Give yourself time. Give yourself 5 years. Why? Because you need to get yourself ready mentally, and you may need to get yourself ready financially. So here's what you have, the key question financially. Do you have a plan for creating a lifetime supply of income? Okay, we're all living in an inflationary area. I can tell you, being on a fixed income in these worlds, it gets a little more challenging than you think it might. Mentally, it weighs on you, so make sure that you've got enough money set aside so that you can live comfortably. This is the financial readiness. Basically, as part of the exit plan, we walk through, sit down with the business owner and say, okay, what do you have for liquid assets today? What's it cost you to run the lifestyle that you want to have when you retire? What's the gap? We work with their financial advisor to see what their theoretical rate of return is going to be, and you come up with a number, and that's going to be the gap. That's called your value gap. So today, many of you are on the left-hand side. You own a private company, you've got some money in your 401k, you've got some real estate, and what's going to happen 5 years from now, you're going to look more like the left-hand side, where you may still own a piece of your company, you've got a fixed income portfolio, you've got an equity portfolio, and you have some other resources, a lake home, a second home, whatever it might be. Several people have asked me, how do you know that you've got enough to do this? I do some work with an investment advisory company down in Augusta, and I asked them to put together a hypothetical scenario. And this is kind of what they'll give their clients as they work through it. It shows them lifetime portfolio value, the assets, the composition of the assets, what your income looks through. And this is pretty standard for what they do. Ask your financial advisor. I'm sure that they're going to have something like this. It's common for them to also do something called a Monte Carlo scenario, where they'll run through and say, well, what happens if the Great Depression occurs 3 years from now, or the crash of '87? So they'll run some different scenarios for you. This is kind of what I started with. What are you going to do after your exit? Are you ready to leave? How involved are you in your day-to-day operations? Do you have a plan for how you're going to spend your leisure time? Do you see your business as a return on invested capital or as a provider to your lifestyle? And they're two very different things, okay? Some people live out of their business. Some people are driving it to say, I want it to continue to grow. It's very different. Are you addicted to your business? Because sometimes it's a habit. And you go and you do it because you've been doing it, not because you should be doing it. The 4 phases of retirement: you're planning for your retirement, shifting into retirement, stepping away, maybe playing golf for a day or two a week, maybe taking a 2 or 3 week vacation. When you go into full retirement, that's going to be something that you got to, for me, it's been 5 years. And I'm comfortable and I'm stepping away from a lot of stuff, and I'm stepping away from exit planning, to be candid with you. This is probably going to be one of my last engagements to share this with you guys. So, and then you go into the 4th step, which is you have restricted options. Your health goes bad, same thing that happened with Sandy. These are the 8 traits of highly successful retirees. They plan ahead. They have a positive mental attitude. They accept change. They don't have titles anymore. Your friends take a bigger role in your life. You kick back. You do physical and mental activities. If you talk to my wife, she wakes up at 3 in the morning and plays Wordle and all these things so that it keeps her mind active. There's an old saying, motion is the lotion. Stay active, keep doing things, and find a purpose and a passion. Those are key things for successful retirement. Here's your owner types I talked about a little while ago. Got the quadrant. Get me out now for the most money. That's the guy who wakes up and says, I'm out of here. I'm financially set, but I'd like to work and choose to stay. My company isn't worth what I want, so I'll stay and grow and save. And I'm financially and mentally ready. Where do you think that 80% of my clients are? Guess? Pick one. 1, 2, 3, or 4. How many think 1? How many think 2? How many think 3? That's it. Most people need those 5 years to do the planning to get their portfolio to where they want it to be and to get them where they want to be. And there's the grid again. Learn your exit options. You saw that slide a couple minutes ago. Sell to a third party. Private equity, recapitalization, refinance. Sell to your employees, which Susan's going to talk about. And a management buyout, and intergenerational transfer. For those of you that have family-owned businesses and you have kids that are invested and involved in the business, this is a key part. So everybody says, what's my business worth? Each path you choose, there's a different value to it. If you say, hey, Susan, I love what you're talking about. I want to do an ESOP. Guess what? There's no negotiation. You don't negotiate what the ESOP's going to pay you. You hire someone, they do a valuation, and that valuation will show up on your desk and it'll be buy or don't buy. Now maybe you can say, oh, you missed this and you missed that, and what's this going to do to it? So there is a little bit to it. Kim's giving me the 5 minutes, so I'm going to talk even faster than I'm talking right now. Okay? So the ESOP has fair market value, recapitalization, investment value, sale to an outside buyer. Synergy value. What does that mean? They think it's going to generate a lot more for them than anybody else would be willing to pay. Have a team. You got EOS implementers, investment bankers, legal and tax advisors, ESOP advisors. EOS, because I'm not going to get to my last of my slides, what's typically happening is the business is here. And you have this value gap that goes to here. And the question is, how can you increase the value of your business? Part of that may be, I'm going to grow it. I'm going to make more sales. But sometimes that's a tough way to go because you're in a competitive market. Sometimes you have to look at your navel a little bit and say, can I manage this business better? Can I delegate better? Can I create accountabilities to my key staff? Does everybody pulling in the same way, or is half of the boat going to the right and half the boat going to the left and you're not getting ahead? Okay, so the EOS is, I'll show it in the last slide, is a process to try to bring your management team and by extension your entire company pulling into the same direction, identifying the key, as they call them, rocks, and trying to blow them out of your way so that can free up the business. Okay, so this is something that is a tool that the IEPA has. So if you work with an IEPA member, they can get you into this thing. It has 20 questions, and it tells you where you are. The CBEC sends, that would be me, sends the owner a link. It takes 5 to 10 minutes. You receive a report. And this is how it typically comes out. Mental readiness is low. This half, 82% of the people really aren't ready to leave yet. Okay? Financial readiness, these are the people who can get out today. So you can come in and you look at it and you say, well, this is what the survey says for the world. Boom. Where are we? Half of small business owners are now over age 55. Only 54% of those people have created some sort of succession plan. It's an opportunity to start moving in a given direction to create it. Okay? 85% of the people said they wanted to become an owner to create something they could pass on, and 84% wanted to create generational wealth, only 54%. So again, this is something you can control. Regrets, losing identity and purpose, selling too soon, leaving money on the table. Do you give me a final warning when I'm done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well.
Just want to make sure. Being unprepared for an unsolicited offer. That happened at Julia's. Jim was sitting there. We sold high-end firearms. He gets a call one day. Anybody ever hear of a company called Cabela's? Okay. He gets a call one day and says, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah at Cabela's, and we really like what you're doing for your firearms auction, and we think that we might want to consider acquiring you. And this is kind of what we think we're going to pay. And Jim's like, ooh, that might be interesting. And so guess what happens? Well, if they're willing to pay this, I might be able to get a little more, and I might be able to get a little more. And he wasn't prepared for something that came out of left field to act on it. And you wait too long, and you wait too long, and you wait too long, and the next thing you know, the financial crisis of 2008 hits, offers off the table, Cabela's is bought out by Bass Pro Shop, all of that stuff goes away. So be prepared just in case that crazy thing happens. And feeling unhappy about how former employees were treated. If you care about your staff, this is what happened when we sold Julia's to Morphe's, is that number one, we had to lay off probably 60% of our staff here in Fairfield. We gave them all a great severance package, but we couldn't guarantee that all of them had great jobs thereafter, which we really tried to do. And then secondly, those that did go to Morphe's, 70% of them are gone 5 years later. It's not where they wanted to be. All right. At this point in time, I'm going to introduce Susan, because I think I'm pretty close to my time. And Cindy, you got this. I've worked with Susan on several engagements, and her introduction probably, I don't know many people who've been advisor to the Treasury. I don't know many people who worked as a managing director for a major Wall Street firm. And she's been able to transition this into, I think, one of the best opportunities for small businesses. Because when you have a business, you have to say, who's going to buy me? What's my exit plan? And if you're selling to an outside party, well, you got to go find that outside party. With an ESOP, you don't have to find the outside party. They're already there. If you've created a transferable business, one that can operate without you, you've already got the foundation for your buyer. So I'll let Susan talk a little bit more about how all of that works. Susan Sherbel.
Nice job. Oh, I'm the clicker.
It's on the table.
Oh, perfect. Hello. First of all, I wanted to start by saying I like to make my presentations kind of interactive. And when you get into the world of ESOPs, there's actually no such thing as a stupid question. Actually, I take that back. There was one stupid question in all my years. We had done a deal for a company, and the ESOP was buying the company, but they got some outside bank financing. And Cindy, I know you used to work for a bank, so I apologize in advance. But so the bank was financing part of the purchase price, and one of the people there said, "Okay, so the bank's financing a part of it, but can we start getting paid on our principal before the bank is paid back?" And I said, "Congratulations, that's the first stupid question I have ever heard in connection with an ESOP. Banks always get paid first. There's no, so that's the only thing, assuming you don't ask that, there's no such thing as a stupid question." So in the midst, as I'm talking, if you have a question, unless it relates to my age, my weight, or my shoe size, bring it on. And you can ask those others, but I will probably lie. Okay, so to begin with, we basically we have all chosen to live in New England and the state of Maine. And it's a kind of, it's a state that likes to tax robustly. Let's put it out there. And between the federal and state tax rate, you're at around, the top rate's around 45%, which hurts. Let's just put it out there. And that affects so many things in the whole transition process. And basically, as Mark so eloquently described, every owner or owners have a potential, even in a state like Maine, which is not as welcoming and inviting to small businesses as other places, but you can still make a go of it as a going concern. The problem is that inevitably, in every owner's lifespan, you start to think of the end game. Where's this all going? Which Mark had just described. Where does this end? What's my liquidity event? How is that going to happen? And sadly, there aren't a lot of really nice alternatives. One is private equity, and you're going to get to know that I'm not a fan of it. But that doesn't work for everyone. First of all, and Mark was absolutely right. There's a very small percentage of companies it actually works for, but for a number of reasons. Number one, you could have a niche business that's so unique and so quirky that it just doesn't fit in any of their big roll-up plans. Number two, you could have management or family members or a team that you want to transition to, and that's not going to work. I just can tell you. Number three on the hit parade, frequently you may have your name associated with it, you may have a vision, and that's not necessarily going to align with private equity. Number four, there could be a lot more juice in the fruit. And why would you want to turn it over to private equity? Why not just get conventional bank financing, pay 7 or 8%, as opposed to paying somebody your baby for and giving them all this value? And then number 5, which is kind of my favorite, so frequently people are smart enough to read the fine print. It's the typical private equity deal. They come in, they dangle a number, and they might have, okay, we'll say it's a $10 million business. They come in and dangle 14. Here's 14. Oh, wow, that sounds good. That looks really good. But they're not going to pay you the 14. They start out with, here's 7 million, and guess what? We're going to teach you something about an earnout. So once you achieve these objectives, we're going to give you the other 7 million. And I was once in a situation with a broker recently, and they were trying to get a client of mine to take a deal with an earnout. And I said to him candidly, no one's listening here. How many times have you actually seen an earnout payout? And he hesitated, hummed, hawed, and said, it's come close. And okay, close doesn't cut it. But yeah, and usually what happens is the target was $1 million, and you're at $1 million and $1, but somebody just has to buy that last Diet Coke. And then, oh, well, it happens. So a lot of people you should be very cautious with those numbers. And so as a result, private equity doesn't work for everybody. So that's not, and then there's a strategic buyer, which frequently can be interesting, but a lot of strategic buyers, that's where it's a bigger fish in your industry, will say, geez, this person, they're about to retire. There's not a good robust management team coming up. We'll just wait them out. We'll just wait, and then we'll take it at a song. So that doesn't always work. Sometimes it works, but not always. So what are you going to do? Well, the next thing is to look internally, to management, to family, to your employees. And I'm assuming they all work for you, so they're all looped together. And we have a lot of our clients, and by the way, since the bio was done, we're at about 170 deals, so we've done a lot. So a lot of people look to their employees, and a lot of our clients will actually go to them and say, I'm arranging my exit, and I'm thinking of transitioning to you all. What do you think? Do you want? Can you buy me out? They share your vision. You've mentored them. You've nurtured them. You've guided and trained them. They like you. You like them. It's all good, but they're employees for a reason. They don't have big trust funds where they can just go in, dip in, take $1 million out, and pay you off. So money is going to be a problem. Secondly, some of my clients have gone to this group and said, how about debt? Debt. What if you just, take a second mortgage on your home and steal from your kid's college fund, drive some rinky-dink, disgusting car for the rest of your lives, and live on Kraft macaroni and cheese and sign some really scary documents to the bank? And as attractive as that alternative may sound, you don't get a lot of takers. Why? Because they're not entrepreneurs, they're employees. They want to go in and get a paycheck and go home and get a paycheck and go. I mean, that's what they want to do. They didn't sign on for lots of risk. And if they had a lot of money, they probably wouldn't put it in the business. So those are usually not available alternatives. And then you come with, okay, let's use the free cash flow of the business. And just to describe, and this is where the tax problem comes in, because this is the most viable alternative out there. And I've got a perfect example, happened within about a 50-mile radius of this room. 70-year-old guy, construction. And it was what I refer to as horizontal construction, roads, bridges, things of that sort. And you could practically set your watch by their EBITDA or their profit. Why? Because it's run by DOT and municipalities. They set those budgets years in advance. So $2 million came in the door every year. You knew it was going to happen for the next 10 years. Okay. The guy was 70, and he had 5 managers, 5 hand-selected managers. Didn't have any kids, but he said, these are like my children. They're my management team. I'm transitioning to them. Okay. His accountant suggested just give them a little bit of stock. Not a lot, but just a little bit of stock. And each year you'll give them more and more. And at the same time, you'll use the $2 million to buy you out. And in about 10 years, you'll have transitioned. So he said, great, this sounds wonderful. Year 1 comes along. The $2 million comes in the door and the guy is ready to grab it. Nope, you got to pay tax. And that's where the 45% bite comes in. So roughly half of it is gone. A little bit over $1 million's left. He's ready to take it, but we have a problem. So remember I told you that the accountant had said, give a little bit of stock to your employees. Okay, so they all got a little bit of stock. In the scheme of things, it wasn't a lot, but the stock each of them received was greater than their total annual salary. And they had to pay tax. And the guy said, that's impossible. It's a gift. They're like my children. IRS takes a very jaundiced view about that. If you get a W-2, it's not a gift. It's compensation. So they had to pay. And the guy said, well, this would be terrible to give a gift and then I wipe you all out financially. I'm not going to do that. So we'll pay it. But then he learned about a tax gross-up where you pay the tax on the award, then you pay the tax on the tax, and the tax on the tax on the tax, and the tax on. By the time that little exercise was done, the $2 million, which was now down to a little over $1 million, had dropped to under $600,000. And it was then given to the guy who paid long-term capital gains, and he had less than 500. At which point he had kind of a conniption and said, there has got to be a better way. This is basically 3/4 of the value had gone to pay tax. And he said, this isn't working. There's got to be something. And at that point, we came in. And we did a transaction in which we, first of all, had a trustee come in. We set up an employee stock ownership plan. I actually took their 401k plan. I did a surgical incision, put an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan, inside of the 401k plan. We then got an outside trustee who found a valuation firm. The valuation firm determined the value of the company. In that case, say the number was $8 million, 4 times profit. We then gave notes to all the shareholders equal to $8 million, okay? Now, at that point, something, and I'm a financial geek and an investment banker, and I live and die by taxes and numbers, and something pretty cool in my world happened. We started with equity equal to $8 million, debt equal to 0, and we flipped it. We now have debt equal to $8 million, and equity's really low. Not going to be wiped out, but pretty close to being wiped out. Let's say it's worth $10,000. Okay? So the trustee buys the shares for $10,000. That's all it's worth. So a classic leveraged buyout. And it's an S corporation, the ESOP owns it, and at that point, the company is 100% owned by an ESOP, and there is no federal or state tax. Where you want to have a moment to think about that. No federal or state tax. Life is good. So at that juncture, when the $2 million comes in the next year, the full $2 million is available to our gentleman. Goes in and he takes it. He's very happy. He is going to pay capital gains, but he's reduced his tax by about half. And as for the other guys, we're no longer in the world of giving his management awards that they have to pay tax on. We're just going to give them shares in the ESOP. And they're not going to be taxed because it's like a 401k plan. It's like an award in the 401k plan. But we're going to do one better because we're going to tell them on that $5,000 of value we gave you in the ESOP, we're going to suggest you elect to be taxed on it. Roth, everybody's heard of a Roth? You go ahead and say, I want to be taxed now because I expect that stock to go up as the debt's paid off. So they all elected Roth treatment. Fast forward 5 years, and the deal was done when interest rates were blessedly at like 1.5%, very, very low. 5.5 years later, the company's performed, debt's paid off. The company is now worth $10 million. These guys are sitting on value that's worth $5 million, and they've paid their tax. And if they're 59.5, they can take it out. And all the other employees they're getting stock as well. They've made Roth elections. It's a beautiful transaction. At this juncture, I've thrown in.
How are the number of shares determined?
To the employees, very good question. So the rules for sub-S 100% ESOP is you can give, you take everybody who has more than 10% and they must be less than 50. So in that case, I gave them each like 9.9. So they were just under 50. And so that's the rule. And then you have a lot of latitude.
50 shares?
Half of the shares,
Half the shares.
percentage. But that was a way for them to get.
The 50%, so that they don't have a majority ownership at that point.
No. Oh, and by the way, to be clear, 100% of the shares are owned by the ESOP. Okay, but they're assigned. Well, our phrase is allocated, but they're assigned or allocated the shares, so that it's kind of like when you think of your 401k plan, and you've got an account, and you say, "Oh, I've got a bunch of Apple stock in my account. I own Apple stock." No, you don't own it. The trustee owns it for your benefit. But we frequently do deals with people, and they'll come out and they'll say, "Oh, I still own 49%. No, you don't. The ESOP owns," and then I'll get these confused accountants and people saying, they say they own 40. No. ESOP owns 100%. They're just assigned that portion.
But again, by an individual, let's say I'm one of the employees,
Okay.
how are my number of shares or value determined? Let's say we got 100 employees. So how do you just allocate those?
Oh, okay. Slightly different question. So what I typically do is when I do a transaction, I try to figure out an upfront allocation, because an ESOP, essentially think of the ESOP as having, it's a really cool structure in that most qualified plans, everything in the qualified plan has to have a home. But in ESOP, you can buy all of the shares, put it in a bucket. Think of all of the participant accounts as empty cups and pour it out over time. I usually take 40 years to pour it out. But what I'll do is I'll have an upfront allocation. So I'll go to the owner and management and say, who do you want to get it? And you have to work within the discrimination rules, but it's fairly easy to do that. You usually offer cash to the people who you don't want to have stock, and they're happy. People love cash. Cash is an easy sell. And then you allocate the stock, and your only constraint is that 50% rule. So you might have an owner who wants 45%. Okay, we're going to get him 45. We may have a group of managers. We give 6 people 1% or something, but it varies. It can be 24 and 24. I'm working on a deal like that now. I can have 12 and 12 and 12.
But does the owner or former owner decide
Yes.
the percentage?
The owner and management, yes.
Okay, and so not everybody has to be included.
Exactly.
But I think there's two pieces to this, Susan. You're talking about the upfront allocation, which is what Susan's talking about. And then once the ESOP is up and running, the allocation, and if I'm not mistaken, you can clarify this, there's 3 things. It can be based on length of service, it can be based on compensation, or a blend of those two. Is that correct?
Well, okay, so I'm a capitalist, and while I've done deals where it's based upon just tenure, my view is the best surrogate for determining somebody's value to the company is compensation. If I pay you a lot, that means you're really valuable. If I pay you a little, it's so I like to base it upon compensation. But I do my upfront allocations. Think of I'm pouring a little bit of water in the cups for a few people, and then I have the rest of the water in the and I like to allocate on compensation. I have some people who do a combination of compensation and tenure. I have a couple of communists who just do it based upon tenure. I don't get that, but whatever. They always change. They always come back and say, that was stupid. Yeah, we just hired a top engineer or a high-paid surgeon, and they're getting less than the janitor. How good is that idea? Not good. So you have a lot of latitude in setting it up. And it works quite well because what I do in my deals is, remember the notes I give to people? I am really stingy with interest. I hate interest. I actually think of the world as being very simple. Your money, your cash flow from the company is like a spigot. So water's coming out. And before the ESOP, you just have one bucket it can go into, just one. That's ordinary income, whether it's an after-tax distribution, whether it's salary, whether it's rent, whatever it is, it's all fully taxable. But when you do the ESOP, you create two additional buckets. The second one is capital gains, because remember all that money was coming to me as compensation or after-tax distributions. Now I'm taxed at capital gains. I like that. But then the last bucket is Roth. So I have those three. And my objective, and I know because it's kind of like a cocaine dealer who spends too much time with the product. We ended up doing the deal. I thought, I've got to do this. I mean, and it was really nice because if you're in financial advisory, there's nowhere to hide. I mean, we can only buy so many Apple computers. That's it. I mean, so it's 45% tax, 45% tax. Then I've shifted, and now I pay about 26 or 27% tax. I'm much happier. But next year, when the 5th year happens, I get to start taking out that cash flow as Roth, free of tax, totally 100% free of tax. And that's good. And our companies do well, because when you don't pay tax, you find, and we model this constantly, when you're paying a 45% tax load, it's like a treadmill. You make money, but you pay tax. You make money, but once you're not paying tax, it's life is good.
Are there safe harbor rules, or are there highly compensated discrimination like in other environments?
Yes, but how we deal with that is there are rules that say you have to provide benefits, comparable benefits, to a non-discriminatory group, which we do. But then we allow diversification. We say, would you like to keep the stock or the cash? And people like cash. You never have problems offering, here's a few $1,000s. People love that. So that's, and the people who want stock get the stock. The people who want cash, and the Department of Labor and IRS love diversification because they've always, they never trust stock. And if people can get cash, they're happy. So that's how we do it. Oh, it's very easy. It's very easy, and people like it. They're happy. They've got some cash. The people want the stock. It's all good.
So this would all be through the vehicle of 401k theoretically.
Right.
So if
I
you have,
embed the ESOP inside of the 401k.
yeah, so if you have a company, let's say, is smaller, that's maybe using like a simple IRA or smaller, vehicle, do you recommend any particular way to transition them to?
I transition my simple to a 401k. And by the way, simples originally started out and they were simple, and then they made the 401k better, and now the simples are not simple. So I've just shifted it to 401k. So, but it just cohabits. The 401k operates exactly as it always has. ESOP, and the reason I use it candidly is when people leave, and I don't want people with stock to make money on the backs of people who are still there. They may have gone to work with a competitor. Maybe they were fired. Maybe they stole from you. Or maybe they're out on the golf course that Mark talked about. But you don't want them to make money. So if I have the 401k, I just move their money into the 401k. Simple. And I like that. And so that's why I put them together. So I did want to touch one item, which is, and maybe it's just always never miss an opportunity to dump on competitors. I don't know, but one of the things that I noticed, our group, we're all rehabilitated Wall Street investment bankers. We're financial people. Our dogs hunt. I mean, we make sure that the numbers work, and we're numbered people. And when I got into this area, I only worked on public company transactions, and then a friend of mine was transitioning, and we designed this, and I thought, geez, why doesn't every private company in the country do this? This is incredible. This is absolutely incredible, and we're on our way. As I say, I think we're about 170. But the interesting thing was, when I did a little bit of checking, most people did partial ESOPs where it was less than 100%. And my group and people frequently get upset with me and say, but what if somebody wants to do a partial ESOP? And my comment is, I won't do it. Just like if I'm a doctor, I'm not going to lop off a healthy arm. A partial ESOP, they have these 1042 where you become a C corporation and you stay for 5. Bad transaction. I mean, again, I'm agnostic. I'm a financial person. If I could make the numbers work, I'd recommend it, but I can't. I've tried and tried, just don't see it. And then some people they say, well, let's do a partial, we're a sub S. Let's do like just under half or something for the ESOP. Doesn't work. Basically, the numbers, due to the dilution, the person who sets it up has lost 25% of their net worth. Then they come to me and say, what happened? Well, did you analyze any numbers? Those are those things that look like letters, but they have pluses and minuses. They're a little bit different. Did you look at them? No, probably not. And then the other thing is, when you have the partial ESOP, if you've got the former owner who's sitting on 51%, he's got to get super big distributions. But who's going to get the rest? The ESOP. So you're putting a lot of cash. You can't accumulate capital. It doesn't work. It's a disaster. So we don't do those transactions. And I tell people, either do 100% or nothing. And am I totally out of time? Oh, okay. So this is just my 100%. But I have, due to the fact that so many of ESOPs started out as these 1042s, I always tell my team, it's a wonder that anyone even speaks to us, because those are just not viable transactions. They're not financially sensible. So the way it works is just as I told you. The shareholder sells to the company, you take the debt, lowers the value of the stock, ESOP trustee takes it over, and you're free of tax. Now, and the great thing is, from an employee standpoint, is they get partnership in a company without paying for it. Good thing. If normally you get into a partnership or minority ownership, you have to pay. Number two, there's no liability if there's some disaster. They don't have to take additional money out of their pocket. No liability to them. Their stock can go to zero, but they don't lose anything else. Number three, this is really important. If somebody's asked to participate as a minority shareholder, good luck in getting your money out. You may never get it out. But with an ESOP, you're guaranteed. And then fourth, the tax consequence. If you take advantage of Roth, it's quite attractive. Yep.
Susan, can you hit real quick on a lot of the questions I've had is, you now have, quote unquote, the employees owning the company. How does that affect the management of the governance?
Really, really great question. And again, this goes back to the point of who owns the stock. And frequently when people do ESOPs, they have these little epitaphs or something on their logo saying employee owned, employee owned. Technically, it's not employee owned. Employee owned gets into, we're close to the state of Vermont. They have something known as worker owned cooperatives. And these are one of these things where everybody gets a share of stock, everybody gets together, they sing Kumbaya, they vote on every decision that's made. might be 50 or 60 of them in a room deciding everything. Basically, one bar of soap and one stick of antiperspirant will probably last a whole group of them for 3 years. It's not a group I'd be associated with. An ESOP, in contrast, is a very, very capitalist organization, just like any other organization in the Fortune 500. You have a shareholder who is the trustee, and then the board of directors and management. So that doesn't change at all. And anyway, thank you all for your time. You've been very interactive. You didn't ask any of those bad questions, so we're good.